Welcome to the OSoSpurs podcast, where we are going to bring you some pragmatism and reasons to not be completely concerned, to be a little bit concerned, but not too concerned, and why we need to keep giving Ange time to bring his philosophy together. And to discuss it all, we have the All-Stars returning in Jonny in Dublin. How are you, Jonny?
All right. I mean, at least it's not Sunday. It's Tuesday, so starting to just moving on. But like, it's been a bad couple of days, I suppose, Tottenham wise. Yeah.
And the Michael Jordan of football tactics. It's Deej over in San Fran. How are you?
Michael Jordan on the Wizards. I'm doing great. You know, nothing better than watching your team give another team in the Prem their first win of the season.
But you're both from the same continent, so that's good enough, right? So there you go.
Sure, yeah.
Right, so diving in, we've got a few things to talk about today, and there's a couple of really good stats, because look, we can't always use underlying stats. The most important stat is the points on the table and winning football matches, but there are some underlying stats that show there's reasons not to be concerned. There's some underlying stats to say there's reason for some fair criticism and judgment. But ultimately, I think we're going to dive into there's always mass overreaction after a defeat, and there's mass over adulation when you win. And it's finding that sweet spot of where we really are. But we also want to dive into why we're still fully behind this project and the potential of it and those things as well. But I know we weren't going to talk about Ipswich in much detail, but we should touch on it. It is important. Deej, I'll go over you because you're the furthest away. What did you make of it? What you were more frustrated than you normally get. You're normally quite reasonable about these defeats, but you were particularly angry, I felt, about that one. What caused that for you?
Well, part of the reason I'm so angry is honestly because I'm now on West Coast time. I got to wake up at the ass crack of dawn on a Sunday morning after I've been out on Saturday, and to watch my team concede go 2-0 down against Ipswich. So, you know, that's never the great start to the Sunday that you want. But honestly, I don't know. It was just like we just looked so almost right. But the problem is that we didn't have the defensive performance to allow for us being almost right on the attacking side of the ball. And I think that it's so clearly shown. And if you watch all of the goals we've conceded, it feels like it, definitely most of them, it's the same thing. You've got a guy unmarked at the back post. You've got a guy unmarked at the back post. You've got a guy unmarked at the back post. Oh, there's a guy at the back post. He's unmarked. That's crazy. And it's always the side with Toro, and it's the side with Brennan Johnson. And I haven't gone and I haven't watched like enough of like the transitions, because usually they're kind of transitional goals. So it's hard. It's like hard to like from like watching like the goal highlight to tell who's at fault there. But someone is not doing their job. Someone is not tracking back enough. I know obviously Johnson probably I've gotten off of social media for unrelated reasons, but Tottenham being the way that it is on Twitter definitely hasn't made it harder to stay away. And I'm sure Brennan Johnson's going to get some pelters for not going in on the goal, the overhead kick goal, for heading that ball away. So it feels easy to kind of like blame him, but at the end of the day, there's some sort of disconnect between Romero, Johnson, and Porro that needs to be sorted out, because we cannot keep giving away the same kind of goal every week.
And so, Jonny, we've lost games we feel we should win before, and it's completely normal to do that. We've bleated the boring stat before of even City on 96 points, whatever it was last season, still didn't win 35% of their games, which is a lot more than people, I think when you're following a team, you think you should be anyone who you deem to have a worse squad than you. So therefore, we would only lose, in our eyes, probably as Tottenham fans, to 3 teams a season. But relative football doesn't work that way. You do lose to a relegation candidate and go, what the hell happened, and all that stuff. But this defeat still even though you could understand, Ipswich are better than what the table says and all that stuff, it just still really, really stung that one, didn't it? Why do you think that one just hurt that much more?
Listen, it makes no sense because, we've been here so many times before in terms of when the hopes are raised and then the disappointment comes. And I want to be like as positive as possibly can, but nobody's really, if they're being fully honest, and I don't think, gonna sort of pretend that what happened on Sunday isn't incredibly disappointing. And I guess there's like the context of the Crystal Palace defeat was really bad, and we just didn't really turn up that day. The Newcastle defeat was unfortunate. We kind of outplayed them most of that game. The game against Ipswich. Okay, we just played Galatasaray, but there was 7 changes or something from the Europa League. So the preceding 2 games obviously were, billed as this big week for Ange following the Palace defeat. Got the City game in the Carabao Cup, which we played really, really well. Obviously, knocking them out, that's a great feather in the cap for Ange. And then he backs it up the following Sunday with a really, really mature and very convincing win over a top 4 rival. Okay, so you kind of like almost like nobody's surprised about Galatasaray really. I mean, I know there's things about that game that we're not going to be happy about, but it was by and large a different team. So going into Ipswich, yeah, we know that Ipswich are probably not as bad as the results suggest and everything else, but it is still Ipswich and it is at home. And we've been really, with the exception of North London Derby, we've been pretty impressive at home. And we've banged in 4 goals 3 times this season. I mean, there's been it was the first game I dodged a bullet. It was the first home Premier League game I've missed this season, and I'm not sorry that I did. But I've been jumping up and down and hugging the dudes around me so many times because we've banged in so many goals at home. We've been really, really good. So even when you go behind Ipswich, you sort of think, well, okay, this is bloody annoying again. But the likelihood is I still thought we'd come back and win. And of course, the other conversation before the game was, looking at the way the other fixtures were lined up for the weekend, the opportunities there to go into the top 4, maybe even into 3rd place with a victory, which you would assume pretty much anybody who knows anything about football, whether they're Tottenham or not, is apart from Ipswich fans maybe, are going to think is almost a home banker. But of course, Tottenham are Tottenham, so it doesn't happen. And it's just that disappointment is for all of those reasons, those things coming together. It really felt like this was an opportunity going to another international break where you go away for another 2 weeks to put things right. And then we're going to the Etihad on the first game back, which we all know is well within our realms of Spurs turning up and doing something, bizarrely. But it's just so frustrating because we had the last international break, disappointment, and here we are again when there was such an opportunity to kind of like, okay, we're establishing ourselves, we're back in the pack, the momentum is good, and the sort of negativity after Palace, people can sort of, not dismiss that entirely, but it's like, Ange is really kind of hopefully quieting the doubters. Instead, everything just blows up worse than it did after the previous defeat. So it's like, it's just not, it's just a really unsavory kind of realm that we inhabit. And I've got a bunch of things I was looking at in terms of just like the whole overreaction to things. And I am not happy about what happened. And there's loads of things about the game itself and other things in general that I'm not happy about. But like, what are people, I mean, we'll get into that. But what do people really think we should do now? It's this whole Ange conversation is really interesting. It's really, really important. But I've got so much to say about it. But specifically about the Ipswich game, that's really what irritated me the most about it.
Yeah, it's funny with football because you mentioned one of the reasons there, which I think there's 2 main reasons why we react. With three core reasons. There's several reasons why we felt so upset with that defeat. One is obviously we have the label of Dr. Tottenham. If you need a victory desperately, come see us at our gaff. We'll sort you out. And no matter how we're playing, we could have been bought out by whatever owner in the world and bought the 11 best players in the world. If we come and play Luton Town at our place, who are currently in League 2, They'll beat us 4-0 when they haven't won in 5 years and they've had back-to-back relegation, whatever it is. If there's that tag, and we were coming off the back of a really good, was it 9 wins in 11? So you're riding high, you're furious high, and you think we win that, we're third, all you doubters, you're wrong. We're right. Tottenham is back, and this is like peak Pochettino Tottenham. This is challenging for titles. Tottenham is coming back. We've clicked. And it was one deflation and realization we're not there yet. We're better, but we're still not there. So that was one thing. The other thing is, like you said, the win takes you to third and the loss takes you 10th. Now, it's so natural as Spurs fans, as any fan, to get overly obsessed with the table rather than the total points and ignore that you're all playing each other in different orders and all that kind of stuff. So, it's not like you're 10th 25 games of the season and then we're 15 points off third with 3 points off third, but it feels so bad being 10th even though you're only 3 points off third. So that was the other reason. It was just the reflection of the table position, I think, really hurt people. And I kind of forget where my third point was, but anyway, there was multiple reasons why that really hurt, but there was some stats which cheered me up a bit. And when you look at the table, you go, City have won 1 in 5, and their one win was against Bournemouth at home, which they so nearly drew. They were so lucky.
I think it was.
Oh, Southampton, sorry.
Yeah.
So lucky to beat Southampton. They should have only got a point. They should have no wins at 5. Then they lost to was it Bournemouth they lost to? Away.
Brighton, Bournemouth, and Sporting Lisbon, and us.
So they've won 1 in 5. Then you're looking at Chelsea have won 2 in 5. Then you're looking at Arsenal who have won 1 in 5. So I think we've hit this period in the season where there's so much midweek football, injuries and hamstrings, all these things are popping all over the place. Managers are trying to rotate their squads and it's not working. That's another thing I've noticed. Villa rested all their key players through a cup and got battered by us. It completely failed. We rested kind of a bunch against Galatasaray and ended up with nothing from either game. I think it partly contributed to not being a half and half in both games rather than full in on both or one. And it was similar with Arsenal as well, trying to juggle things and just ended up feeling all disjointed and not really working out. But I think we forget everyone's all over the place.
Villa lost 4 in a row, and the fifth game in their last 5 they drew. So it's a really important point, and you're right. And like obviously we're looking at it through our lenses, like you said, Jim. The City fans probably are a bit more kind of confident about things. The Arsenal fans are much more kind of knee jerk, and it's a little bit more kind of in the media regarding, they lose to Inter in the Champions League, and there's Arteta out is trending on X, and you've got the whole whole meltdown amongst their fan base because they're 9 points behind Liverpool after 11 games when they're supposed to be genuine, kind of like if anyone's going to beat City, it's going to be Arsenal. And now they're 9 points behind after just basically the core of the season to Liverpool. And then Edu is gone and walked out, and Arsenal as well. So like they've got their own equivalent. So it's just like the whole incendiary nature of social media, the mainstream media as well. I think Spurs are one of those clubs that genuinely we are a bit of a kind of easy target, a bit of a soft target, and quite easy to wind up and all of the rest of it. And then within our own fan base, there's a lot of vitriol is probably not that far off the mark. Like there's a really big, wide spectrum of feeling towards lots of key issues, particularly the ownership, but also then, anything that the ownership decides to do, which is appointing every manager and deciding on who they're going to buy and all of the rest of it. So they put the mechanisms in place. So it's kind of like that element of the Spurs fan base is clearly at the moment, getting a lot more of making a lot more of the noise, getting a lot more of the attention. And it for people like ourselves that are maybe, we would like to think maybe are a bit more measured and looking at the historical context of other clubs and what journeys they've been on, which we have spoken about before, but I think it's still valid. The question in terms of Ange is it's for me, it's completely and utterly nuts that people are asking this question, and all over YouTube you're seeing, people going bonkers about Postecoglou.
Did you know, a quick stat for you, that was Ange's 50th game.
This is 49th, I think.
49th.
Yeah.
He's on the exact same points tally as Klopp and Arteta were on 40. They were on 50 games. So if he gets a draw in his next game, he's actually crazily somehow ahead of them, despite what feels like 20 games of pretty bad form. Deej, are the underlying stats, are we using them as a comfort blanket and ignoring reality? What's your view?
Well, I mean, the underlying stats have to come from somewhere. Like, I think this Tottenham team is kind of a really good case study into why underlying stats are good, but there's no substitute to watching the game, because the underlying stat isn't going to tell you that we're leaving the back post open at 8 times a match. Like, the underlying stats aren't going to tell you how we're conceding our goals. They're just going to tell you that we're conceding. The underlying stats are, but like, other than that, like you can watch the games and you can see us doing, like, well, we're doing good things. We still, I believe, have the most goals scored in the league. We also are like top 2 or 3 in expected goals. We're also, interestingly enough, top 3 in big chances missed, which generally means that we're about 50-50 on converting big chances. That number should go up.
Does that just mean you've got Timo Werner in your squad, basically?
I mean, it doesn't mean he's not there. I'll say that. But yeah, like, we getting these kind of players like back in the team is going to make that number go up. Getting players like Son back in the team, will make that, but the number of big chances missed go up more slowly, I suppose. And yeah, I mean, I think it's just so hard in the Premier League. It's a bit like for like the 5 American people that listen to this podcast, 3 of which are my family members. Hello.
Hey,
it's a bit like college.
We're in nearly 1,000 regular viewers from the US, actually, Deej. I think it's 25%.
Okay, well, for those of you in the US, it's a bit like college football. I'm gonna do it for my US viewers only. It's a bit like college football because, like, you lose in college football, you lose a game, at least before this season. The rest of the season basically doesn't matter. Like, you have no chance of winning anything. And it kind of, especially with the way that the Premier League has been for the past, like, 5-6 years since City kind of really started being City, you lose 3 or 4 games and it feels like the season's over. Because realistically, I know that you only you only win like X percentage of their games, but a lot of those other games they're drawing. They're not losing those games. So the margin for error in like a league format is so unbelievably tight that you just can't afford to lose these games to a team like Ipswich. No offense to Ipswich, but like, they're not, like, if you have title aspirations, they're not a team that you can be even playing close realistically. And
Well,
just
I agree and disagree. Yes, I think we clearly lose them too regularly, but the data would show that even a team on 90 odd points would have 1 or 2 freak results in a season, 1 or 2 Ipswiches. The problem is we have an Ipswich moment every month.
yeah,
and that's it, yeah.
And I don't think that the crash out from this would have been as pronounced if we hadn't also just given Crystal Palace their first win of the season. Like, this is the second game in 3 game weeks that we have given a Premier League club their first game week of the season, the first win of the season in October, November. That is like that if you just see that and you don't like watch and you're not like paying attention to the other matches, that stat is setting alarm bells off, and it makes it feel like the season's over. And like, we're not at a place, I think, that we can be challenging for a title. We don't have depth. There are pieces that I think need to be upgraded. I'm not going to talk about what, because we're not close enough to the January window, and we keep some content for later. But we're just, I hate to keep doing, but like, look at every successful manager with the exception of maybe Pep. Like, they're building these teams season after season. You cannot build a team that is challenging for a title in a season unless you have one that has been challenging for titles and you just come in and tweak the system like Slot has. It is completely unfair to hold on to the same standard that you're holding a coach like Slot to. Slot has done fantastic. I'm not taking anything away from him, but he has such the team that is built at Liverpool is already built to win a title. It's built to compete. The team that was left behind by Conte was very much not built to compete. At least not in the manner that Ange wants to.
Yeah. Well, of the 25-man squad that Conte left behind, or Stellini or Mason, whichever one you want to blame it on, all three left behind. 3 of those players you could argue were worth keeping in Kane, Son, and Sarr. And Davies. But what I'm saying is we were really Romero. You're really clutching at straws, really. And Kane was. But Jonny, I'll give you a quick stat because I know you love supercomputers. Opta's supercomputer, which apparently takes all the important numbers and spits them together because there's an element of randomness in football that doesn't represent something you can control, really. It's that Tim Krul getting a 10 out of 10 against Tottenham Hotspur type thing. Like, okay, that's a freak day. It's not going to happen all the time. Normally, Tottenham win that game. The supercomputer has Tottenham 3 points better off in third. So, once again, the stats say, hey, you know what? This year, everyone's patchy. Everyone's dropping points against each other. We're all good. Keep playing like this, and we'll finish third. But do you agree with that? Do you? I don't know. It took that optimism out of me and made me think we're more like 6th than we are like 3rd right now.
Yeah, no, I think we are more like 6th than we are like 3rd, if we're going to be completely honest. But there was another interesting article I was reading earlier today at somebody called Profspur, who I've not come across before, but it was like a really interesting piece about this tendency we have of conceding the first goal in most games. And one of the things that he's analysed is the XG of the goals. And in the 9, we've conceded 9 times in 17 games in all competitions, but I think it's worse than that at home. It's way worse than that at home. But when you look at the XG of them, he's making the point that the 9 goals that we've conceded, the XG of those 9 goals is 2.42 when you put them together. So obviously you're going to expect the XG is going to be lower than the number of goals, but the differential between 2.42 and 9 is pretty gargantuan. So he's saying, well, is that because of poor defensive luck? Is it because of wider issues like Dejan's back post situation? But it's just quite interesting that it does suggest that there's a little bit of unluck or a lack of luck in some of them. I do think, and I know it sounds really lame, because we can't just sort of pretend that there aren't other problems. But even with the second goal in the game the other day, the way Vic palmed the ball out and it comes off Jagason before he has a chance to pull his foot away. I mean, it was messy, and we found ourselves in that situation. We kind of authors of being in that situation. But there's been quite a few instances like that. I think that just seem to just a little bit lack of good fortune. But I don't think that the way that we are setting ourselves out, it's an interesting one. I think that whole issue about our defense and about losing the first goal and going behind, and that's something that I'd really love to kind of get my head around and know what the answer is to it, because it isn't a matter of, like, people say, Ange isn't getting them all kind of set up properly. I think most of the games we've been to, Spurs actually start pretty strong for the first 5-10 minutes typically, and then kind of get caught in the break or something, because the average time that we're conceding is 31 minutes in those first goals. So it's not a matter of how we're starting the game really per se. Anyway,
I need to quickly pass Deej because he's got to jump. We're going to carry on, Jonny.
Okay.
But Deej, what's your stat? You had one for us, didn't you? A leaving comment.
I don't necessarily have a stat. My stat will be that you can't. What I will say is you cannot game plan against something like Galatasaray's first goal, like in the midweek. That just, like, shit happens. Honestly, like, you don't save those, especially with Fraser Forster in that. But I will leave us with, it's gonna be okay. We're going to be fine. We play a great brand of football. We are bringing in players, and you can see the players that we have getting better. I don't think there's anyone that I've thought has gotten markedly worse since the beginning of last season, or since they've been brought to the club. So we are moving in a positive direction, and it will be good to remember that even if there are bumps in the road like Ipswich, we are going towards something good. And also throwing a fit won't do anything, because who the hell are we going to hire Ten Hag?
We've said before that people throw. Thanks for joining, by Deej. Jump back on if
Good
you've got
one,
time. Let it see it.
See you, mate.
We've said before though, like when people project that level of noise, it's a bit like when you come home from work really tired and you accidentally stub your toe and you yell at your kid. You're not angry at your kid for leaving the Lego block out you trod on or whatever it is that made you really angry. You're just angry at the situation. You're tired, you're frustrated, you're annoyed, and the only way you can project that anger is by raising your voice and directing at the nearest thing to you. And I think people project their own inner feelings, which are very much anger related. It's very easy to project your feelings on social media and on WhatsApp and on whatever else by just ranting and having other people go, "You're right, I feel the same too." And it's almost like a weird kind of explosive type of therapy. It's kind of like the equivalent of going to the gym and just running your ass off until you're absolutely exhausted because you're really stressed. So you just get out your system. I feel that's how people deal with it. And then the next day comes and they calm a bit more. They calm a bit more. And you go, okay, it was annoying, but it wasn't actually that bad. But I think people are still at that. It really was that bad stage right now.
Again, it's the timing, isn't it? With the break, that is another format. That's
a
really
killer.
tough one. Yeah,
that is a killer.
But it's the whole kind of the extremity of the dialogue is what really bugs, and even like The Athletic, which is obviously a brilliant publication, and they've got really good writers, and they've got sort of literally less than a week before the game against Ipswich, you've got articles that Jack Brook, Ange Ball is working. The numbers suggest Spurs are improving on last season. That was a headline. Then just a couple of days before that, it was Tottenham have just enjoyed the best week of the Ange Postecoglou era. That was on the 4th of November. And then 6 days later, we've had this sort of like game that necessitates a conversation apparently everywhere that Ange is, and some people, significant number of people, it's definitely the minority who are seriously questioning the viability of his, appointment and not sticking with him. And that's what annoys me the most. Again, I should be more annoyed with the team, because I was really cross after the game with the team, and I'm so glad I didn't go over to the match, because those games are a nightmare to travel back from, when you've got, especially a game like that you just assume you're going to win, which is stupid, but you still do, for all the reasons we've already discussed.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, we've got Ange's been given a 4-year contract when he was appointed. We're 3 points behind third place. We're in the last 8 of the Carabao Cup. I know United are probably going to have a bit of a bounce now, and it's a more complicated game probably than it would have been before. But we're still at home in that game, so like we got a pretty good opportunity to get into the last 4 there. We're doing well in the Europa League. Galatasaray is possibly the most difficult fixture in that. It's certainly the most intimidating ground to go to.
Mm-hmm.
We are, as Deej said, we are playing more of a Tottenham way in terms of the attacking. I know it's not like every week. Ange Postecoglou doesn't do what Antonio Conte does and like have hissy fits and throw everybody under the bus and complain about the culture of the club whenever things go wrong. He takes responsibility, and he doesn't shirk that. We've had in 4 years, less than 4 years after Pochettino, Jose Mourinho. I looked this up earlier because it's like I just want to know what people think we should do if Ange isn't right. We in less than 4 years after Pochettino, Jose Mourinho managed Spurs for 86 games. Ryan Mason has managed Spurs as in caretaker form on 2 spells for 13 games in total. Nuno managed 17 games. Antonio Conte managed 76 games, and Christian Stellini managed as for 4 games. So, like, that's in under 4 years. Like, I'm sorry, that's how many? That's 6 names I've just rattled off there, 5 or 6 names. Like, And we've appointed somebody finally who plays the kind of brand of football that we want to see, who most fans love the idea of, a person with integrity. And I know he's not got the sort of the CV of Mourinho or Conte, but like he's a manager that since Pochettino, he's the first manager who had that kind of like really proud and pleased he represents my team, my club, and we are still doing, as I said, we are still like involved in things, and we have got a squad that I know that they're not maybe the signings that some people want, but Lucas Bergwall and Archie Gray, for example, then Vuskovic, obviously Van de Ven, like there's a whole heap of players. Like the squad has been transformed. Look at our bench the other day. I mean, I didn't see anyone really kicking off about the starting 11. And then you look at the bench and you've got like the likes of Jed Spence's coming back in again. And again, credit to Ange, I think, has to be granted there for getting him back in the fold and potentially making a difference. He's done well when he's been involved. And there's so many things about the future Spurs that I think are still really promising. And when you're putting it in the historical context that we've already said today and previously about Arsenal and Liverpool and stuff, I mean, people just have to cop on. What are you going to do? Seriously, who are you going to appoint? What's the solution? It's mental.
It's also like how it always goes with this, and people have always complained like it's broken. We've tried so many managers. The problem must be Levy or whoever it is. We don't go to the ownership stuff, but they want to appoint direction at whoever. And then at the same time, they ask us to have the same reaction to every manager appointment, which is give them 18 months. You're not top of the league. You're not challenging for a title. Fire them and get someone else. 6-month uptick. Not where we want to be in 18 months. Fire them. Next one. Rinse, repeat. Rinse, repeat. Rinse, repeat. Rinse, repeat. And then the reason Poch worked was expectations were so much lower at that stage, and he inherited a spine of a young Lloris, Carl Walker, Jan Vertonghen, Toby Alderweireld, Moussa Dembele, Harry Kane, Danny Rose, like world class. We didn't realise how good they were at that time. But even then, it was a bit patchy on the rise. And then we get a manager. It's like we all said at the start. We know we said at the start of the season. Here's our prediction. It will be fun attacking football. We'll have the boring narrative that is no plan B. We know that's rubbish because we've researched this manager and we've looked at history. Everyone says that, but it's actually rubbish. But it will take at least 2 seasons until we're probably challenging for something. And there'll be games where it just goes wrong and we're going to stick with him. We're going to stick with him. We're going to stick with him. You get 18 months in and everyone's ready to bail. They're like, no. And we're not even like in a dire situation. There's big improvements from last year in terms of results. Last year, the first 10 games were better in terms of points, but the performances weren't better. So I get it's hard to compare them. But the cups have been significantly better this season. We're competing on more fronts because we were already dumped out of a cup at that stage last season. And we know we're still 5 players from that 25-man squad. We need the 6. We need the backup left-footed wing-back. We need arguably left-footed centre-back. You need a better winger. You need a backup striker that can stay fit for 5 minutes. We don't have these things yet, so it's not going to work to the perfect level. But people want to bail on it. Like you said, for what? For what? To start another project and in 18 months do the same thing? Give this guy a few years. Come on. I find it frustrating.
But what do you think, Jim? Because the other
that
issue
answers
that
Sean's
I think...
question, sorry, as well. Go on, sorry.
Mate,
just say Sean asked why we should keep Ange. I think we just answered it for him. That was his question in the chat. Go on, Johnny.
No, I was just going to say, in terms of the players that I think a lot of fans, including myself, would be frustrated by are the ones who have got the leadership roles. Romero, Maddison, Sonny definitely the other day was really pretty poor. Let's be honest. I mean, I've eulogized about Sonny before. And almost all of us absolutely worship the ground he walks on. But when you're looking at responses to these adversarial or these challenging situations, like I definitely think that is something we've touched on it before, and I think it was really encapsulated again with Ipswich. People were annoyed with Maddison's body language and everything. in the Ipswich or at the end of the Ipswich game. And to be honest with you, I get that too. It winds me up when players are all jovial with the opposition straight after a defeat. Nah, sorry, like people are paying a lot of money to go and watch you and buying whatever merch to pay your wages and stuff, and then you're having like a crack like that afterwards when we're gutted. That's something I definitely feel is an issue still for us, and I don't know what you think about that, and how we kind of address that situation, because we don't have like a Roy Keane sort of a character in there who's just going to like take no prisoners and rile up the troops and galvanize the team.
Yeah, and this goes a bit to Greg's point. He wrote a question about inexperience being a key part, and I want to lean onto that as well as saying leadership, like you were mentioning there. And with it, I do agree that it wasn't any specific players' fault we didn't win. Like it wasn't like everyone was amazing and Son was bad. Like Son was just on par. He actually in moments was one of the better players, but that's not a high ceiling in that game. But I feel like there's some areas where we've been a bit in denial of a fan base. And one of those is Son's like the most precious thing we've got because he embodies loyalty to the club. He's just an amazing human being, an amazing player, and still capable of amazing moments. We love him, but is he 33 or 32? Like we know he's not as good as he was. That is just a reality, and I know that will annoy people, but he's not, and he's not going to be getting better. And people say, look at Salah. I'm sorry, but he's never been as good as Mo Salah. And I know people will say, yes, he has. Mo Salah is arguably the greatest Liverpool player in the last 20 years, maybe. I can't think of anyone who's achieved as much as him. And they have had a lot better players than we have. I think if you could have prime Salah for his whole career or prime Son, most people would say prime Salah, right?
Yeah.
But Son's just he's not doing it consistently this season. Maddison's leadership, it irks me, man. We've said this before. He loses the ball in the opposition third, and he goes down and holds his ankle, rolls around, and you're like, go get it and chase the ball back. Go get it. You've lost it. You haven't won a foul. Go get the ball back. And he doesn't. And then it's the goading of opposition before games and then not showing up in the game. I'm like, you can do that when you're Ronaldo. But when you're James Maddison and you've scored one goal, which was a free kick when you're 3-0 up, it's just like, why are you goading Ipswich and saying Norwich are the biggest club in
East Anglia?
East Anglia. And then just why pick that fight? Like, I get you had a bit of history of, and it was even the way, like in hindsight, we loved it. But you signed for Spurs, you straight on the Gaza shirt. I'm Mr. Tottenham, and we all milked it. But you're not Tottenham, are you? And I can see why Leicester fans were like, "What a pillock! Like you've been with us for all these years, and you're already saying you're now a Tottenham fan. Like you're a Leicester boy." I just find him very egotistical and irksome, and it's the wrong personality when you're digging deep for a win. I don't like that. I feel bad because Deej has a good defense of him, and I feel like he's not here to defend himself. Defend matters on that to give a balanced view. But there you go.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not really going to defend him either. So I would sympathise with everything you've just said, because I think like the other thing is he argues with the referee an awful lot, and he's very mouthy. Like he was superb at the beginning of last season when we were on that run, but I think when the going gets tough, he's not one of those sort of players that seems to step up. He's quite inconsistent, and obviously he's had his injury issues and then getting back to form and stuff. So I'd love him to, obviously, like, you know, you want any player who's wearing your jersey to like be the best they can be and prove me wrong. Like, it's not as if I've got any vested interest in like being proven correct if I'm having a moan. But yeah, I think we've seen quite a lot of, you know, over a year now, and I think everything you've said is pretty on the money. And it is with he's the vice captain, and he's one of the few players that we have that's not very inexperienced. Like most of them are now in their very early 20s. So you would expect more from him. He's an England international. He should be motivated to get back into England's squad, having missed out on the Euros. And he's like, I don't know, it just seems to be believing in his own hype, and it's not easy to get into that England midfield, to put it lightly. But you know, there's an opportunity. I don't know, it's mad. and Romero is kind of a similar. You can have a similar conversation, and there's a lot of chat about him, isn't there, in terms of speculation regarding his future and his alleged interest in courting other clubs, Madrid being the one that always seems to get mentioned, which, if I'd be amazed at the way he's playing at the moment if Madrid wanted to buy him because he's so inconsistent. Maybe he puts on a Madrid jersey and he's some kind of monster like he is for Argentina. But no, I wouldn't have thought so.
Do you know who would probably spend 100 million quid on him? Would probably Man United. Someone like that. I don't know. I just don't think I don't think they would sell him to Man United, but he needs to play to his potential every week if he wants that. I think it's tough. He's won so much at an international level. If he won nothing again, he would still go down as a great, all-time great. Well, Argentina have had so many greats. Maybe not an all-time great, but he would go down as a player with, well, this guy's won the World Cup and two Copa Americas. Like, wow, what a player he was on his day. Howard, I just want to read out some of our members' questions from YouTube, which is Howard's, which was, why can't we win these matches that we're supposed to, dagnam it? Yeah, I think we've answered that one. But he also asked about who would buy for less than 40 million quid to fix this team. We'll do a transfer special in a few weeks when we're a bit closer to January, I think, and the links will all start. Benton Kazban, Howard, we don't know when that's coming in yet. We want it to drop when we've got lots of European matches, though, so we can play in the Europa if he's banned from the Prem or vice versa, however it works. But we had a Shafay. Why do our fans want to downplay last season? We finished 5th without replacing Kane. They'll be quick to mention the initial 10-game run, but forget that there were draws in there and you don't finish 5th, almost 4th in the Prem with just 10 good games. We did enough for 5th. And this season, there's been improvements to our game. I think it's more of a point than a question, but I think we agree. We're very quick to discredit our achievement. We do it we find reasons to rule out our progress as fluke, doesn't count, whatever, and then reasons to almost exaggerate the problems. It's almost like an inferiority complex that you need to, when someone says, wow, that's really good drawing, Johnny, and you look at your shoes and you rub your feet and you go, no, it's not, it's rubbish. It's pretty good. It's just, I don't know, it's a bit like just, they can't almost accept progress because we're scared of hurting ourselves by getting, I don't know, maybe that's a bad analogy.
No, I think that's very true. I think it's the same with all of us. I mean, there'll be people maybe watching this or listening to this, and they're thinking that what I'm saying is absolute garbage because they've got a very different way of responding to the situation, and they'll be thinking that I'm ignoring a whole heap of things, and then I'm referring to things that others ignore. So I think it's just a human trait, but I do think that there are certain that is one that just gets sputtered out all the time about the first 10 games as if there was nothing else to what happened last season. I mean, there's definitely been players who've come on a lot. I mean, Kulusevski's the one player who's had a brilliant season, and he's almost every game been potentially man of the match. But I think you've got to look at other individuals as well as the team and see things going in the right direction. I know it's not everybody, and you look at Udogie and say, well, he's having a bit of a ropey run at the moment, but not everyone will agree. But Brennan Johnson, compared with where he was 12 months ago, I mean, for me, I know he wasn't as good on Saturday or Sunday. Maybe could have done better with the opportunity early on, but I mean, his confidence and his effect in games, from my point of view, is really really impressive. And I don't understand the Brennan Johnson bashing. I was really skeptical about him last year. And like a lot of people, you sort of see him going in half-heartedly into challenges and not, you just seem to be a bit of a one-trick pony with the speed and coming in and whipping in crosses. And it isn't just that. He is, especially his finishing. He's got, you've got your wager, haven't you? Is it, how many he's on now? Is it 7 goals he's got this season or something?
Yeah, I've got to bet he'll score at least 10.
Yeah. So, I mean, I wouldn't be sweating on that one, Jim. That looks like a safe win for you, unless he gets an injury or something. So I shouldn't have said that out loud. But
Yeah.
there's
But it
lots of
was,
things that we can look to and think, well, there's improvements.
well, someone posted on Johnson, and this is it outlies the problem for me where people are looking for reasons to bash certain players. Look, like they posted a stat that said Johnson's game against Ipswich, 0 goals, 0 assists. So that's 90%, 95% of the freaking players on the pitch. Anyway, doesn't really mean 0 shots on target, 0 chances created, 0 accurate crosses. So we did cross, but they weren't accurate. He didn't win any fouls. I don't know why that, and he didn't have any successful dribbles. So pretty much a really bad game. But all the players, and then someone on the top comment was, "What can you tell me how the other players did on those stats?" And they went, "I have no idea." So that just shows you've gone proactively out of your way to just highlight the negatives of one player without even looking across the board to see is it an outlier. But you're trying to project it as an outlier because it fits your viewpoint. You want others to be on board with. But any final points from you, Johnny, before we wrap up today?
Listen, we've got City up next, so that's maybe the game we were looking for. Although Dr. Tottenham is Dr. Tottenham going to give Pep his first win in 5. People might look at it like that, but no, I think we just have to cop on and try and stay together as a fan base. And we are called supporters. We're supposed to be supporters, and we need to get behind the team. Doesn't mean you have to be happy about everything, but there's it's football. Lots of us have got other things going on in our lives. Well, we've all got other things going on in our lives. We've got good things and bad things. Football is supposed to be adding a positive dimension to our lives. It's something that brings us together as friends, something that we can memories we can cherish, and excitement and hope for things that may or may not happen in the future. And let's just try and get back to that. I mean, I spend a shed load of money and I work a lot of extra hours to pay for my addiction to Tottenham. It's not like I'm some kind of fair weather fan who's just spouting out words. I practice what I preach. But I think I just wish we would stay together a little bit more united as a fan base, and remember at the end of the day we're supposed to be enjoying this, and we're supposed to be getting behind our team. And whether they're your favorite player or not, whether you're a Brennan Johnson hater or a fan, at the end of the day, surely you all want Brennan Johnson to be the best, and every other one of our players that wearing the cockerel want to be the best they can be. And I still think that we've got to back Ange in the project, because there's, from my point of view, lots of things that we are to be hopeful for the future. So yeah, that's kind of how I would feel. Want other people to maybe reflect a little bit more and get a bit of perspective on things. How about you, pal?
Yeah, I'm similar final thoughts, and I think just City away. I know it's a funny one on paper because we're their bogey team and that, but on paper that's not really the game you want right now. But we've got some reasonable fixtures after that, and just people say, the players don't see this negativity, we're allowed to voice it, blah blah, but they do. That's why they delete their social media accounts. And there was even one people start calling out all this. People start calling out the fans, season ticket holders. Can we just drop all this? And just back a manager through a project, try something new, and if this time next year we are still using underlying stats to justify a 10th place in the table, I'm with you. But let's let him build the entire squad he thinks will work, and let's let him have a season with it, and let's see how we go. Yeah. Because
Can I just make one small point briefly? Ten Hag was widely derided, and was wanted out by probably the majority of United fans for quite a long time before they actually pulled the trigger on him. But looking at those first 50 games stats that you were quoted earlier, I was also looking at Ten Hag, and with the exception of Pep, because it's a different situation with their money in their squad and him. His win, and he won 30 out of his first 50 games, and he's also won 2 trophies. But he's some kind of clown who gets. I mean, I'm not going to speak on behalf of United fans, but the guy ends up getting the sack, whatever, 2.5 years after he's been appointed, with a couple of pots in the trophy cabinet, and he's had that kind of a start. Well, just because you've had a great start doesn't mean that you're going to be some kind of guy who's going to build an empire and be the sort of worthy successor to Ferguson. So like people need to understand things don't always go in sort of nice, neat, straight lines, linear progression. It's like life. You don't know what's around the corner. You don't know. Things don't always go in the same trajectory, and we just have to realize that we thought we were going to take care of Ipswich, but we didn't, and it sucks. And we didn't see that coming. But think of the other things where we knocked City out of the cup. Not everybody saw that coming either. So, it's what's supposed to make the whole experience, exciting and enjoyable. And it's one of the things about the Premier League. All of those teams that keep, coming up and surprising the big boys. It's not just Tottenham that's at the wrong end of these things. And yeah, we got to be positive.
Agree. Right. Up the Spurs, Jonny.
Come on, you Spurs.
Up Ange,
Jimbo.
up the Spurs.
Up Ange.